chapter, we're going to be talking about organizing your speech, the supporting materials for your speech, transitions and signposts, which are very, and your conclusion. We're going to touch on those a little bit, and of course, your preparation and your speaker's outlines. Now, that's a lot in one chapter. So let's just kind of start getting. Outlining and all that good stuff that we just mentioned. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about, it had this in the textbook, and I thought it was funny, and I found this graph. It is kind of a sandwich, isn't it? It's a content sandwich. You've got your top bun for your drawing the audience in. You've got the main ideas and supporting material, which is I personally like a hamburger with lots of big, fat, juicy piece of meat. And then you've got your signposts, which are the mustard and the mayo. This is cute. This is in your PowerPoint now. You can look at that and see what you think. Okay, we're going to talk about organizing your main ideas. You have to, because I told you to come up with 3 different concept symbols to discuss, that's probably going to be topically organized. And topically means by topic, second or third. Well, there are different schools of thought here, and it has to do completely with your choice. Now, if you want to go with the last thing you said, that's the concept called recency. Okay, so you arrange it from least important to most important, weakest to strongest. Individual message is what your audience is going to walk away with. Okay, some people like primacy, primacy, primacy. You can say arrangement of ideas that's the opposite. Most important to the least important, strongest to the weakest. You really want to hit them with a punch. Then you're going to go with primacy or primacy. Topic that you're telling us about. It's something really detail oriented, maybe scientific, a lot of numbers. Then you to help them kind of get used to a little bit, all the way to the most complex. Okay, start us off easy. Uh, not everyone is going to know. Then there's chronologically, of course, in order of time or sequence of events. If you look at their example here, they have this image of his particular organization, whatever it is. If you were to go with chronological, that might it would be in order this and then this. Maybe I don't know. I don't know the organization, but here it looks to me like it might be topical or spatial, which is I would probably describe the different buildings, where they're located, and what courses are taught in each division. Okay, if I were going to, but spatially is by location, east, west, north, south. If you don't like those designations, you can always go with down the road. Cause and discuss the cause with us. What is the problem? What is the situation, and what effects does it have? Now, here's the thing with cause and effect and cause, because they go together. A cause creates an effect, which creates another cause, which creates another effect. It's quite often that's going to give rise to another problem that you're going to have to address. So you have to make sure to cover those bases in a speech. Problem solution. You give the by the way, those were all the organizational systems that we're going to be looking at. Notice all the purple underlined bold because they're all fairly important. Okay, for you. Okay. In the US, speakers tend to be linear, that means in order, start to finish, and very direct. This is what I'm going to tell you. Have a tendency to kind of go off topic and go all over the place. I think I have a tendency towards the Semitic. Asians allude to a point. It takes them a while to get there. They kind of roam around until they get to the point. Romance languages and Russian cultures, they begin with a basic principle and then they kind of like the Asian way of going at it. You go around and around and around. But I will admit I'm kind of either Semitic or Russian because I do tend at the bottom of the screen you can see where the source for this image and this information is. Now let's talk about ethics. According to recency, best is this ethical to save important statistics for last? Well, I think it depends on the topic, quite frankly. Give uh, important statistics first to give people time to take in the information, to process the information. But now we're going to talk about organizing your supporting materials. Supporting materials are all those things that we use to prove a point. You should never make a point without giving me point is valid. Okay? If you can't support your opinion is not valid. Sucks, right? But that's the way life. All of these people make a point, but then they never support their opinion. I don't see the reasoning for that, but it happens. Okay, so let's look at your organization is important. By the way, I had to practice that word. It is not an easy word to say. Okay, specificity. When you organize your information, that's one type of specificity. But if you go from a general statement to specific information, that sometimes helps your audience a little bit more. Depends on you. Evidence in the news all the time. Here's the thing. Hard evidence is statistics. It's numbers. It's absolute data that we can back up by looking at evidence. Soft evidence is illustrations, descriptions, explanations, definitions. You would think that would be and opinions. Opinions are definitely not hard evidence. Okay. Even pictures are not considered hard evidence because you don't know the context. You have to make sure to include all aspects of the topic and don't edit. Because the minute you edit, it becomes soft evidence and it's not. News all over the place, they edit. They edit videos, they edit speeches, they edit phrases and comments, and they're constantly, and that's not good either. go let the dog in. That's the problem with working from home. So, okay, signposts are your cues for your audience. Here's the thing. We talked about this briefly in the last chapter. Just to speak, I am going to have this outline. I'm going to have an idea of what you're saying next and what you're going to be talking about and where you are in your speech. The rest of the audience will not. They need to have these verbal cues so they know where you are in your speech. Okay, these ideas because it helps us to process uh, how far we're going, what we're going to talk about, and there are different things we can do to assist with that. So we're going to talk about signposts, which are organization cues for the audience. I like the little graphic here. So I just love this. Beginning of this video, I said we are going to talk about, and I listed the things we're going to be discussing in this chapter. That is an initial preview. That's what's to come. I'm giving you the main idea, usually along with the central idea. The central idea in the text is pretty given. It's like in the title of the chapter. Because the more times we hear something, the more times we take it in, the more opportunity we have to remember it. Remember, we only hear or comprehend about 10% of what we hear in a day. And we remember, well, we might actually comprehend more than that, what we remember. Repeating things. So if they're repeating it, that means it's something you need to remember. An internal preview comes within the speech that introduces ideas to hey, we've talked about the organizational systems and we've talked about uh, let me see, the supporting materials, but now the introduction and conclusion and then your outline. That would be an internal preview. Now, the transitions themselves can be verbal and nonverbal. Finger, and I said first, it helps your audience to get, again, that visual cue. Okay? If you could get first and then non-verbally, okay? And then I say second, or I can use a facial expression, which is a non. We already know what that is. Or if I'm about to get into something really exciting, I might start speeding up and I might raise my voice and I might jump up and down a little bit. You never know. Point can help them understand the organization of their speech. Okay, people, we are on point number 3, which is verbal and nonverbal. An internal summary is a recap of what has been said so far. We've talked about your organizational types. We've talked about supporting materials, and we're talking because I'm reminding you of what we've said so far. Remember, your audience does not have a written clue of what you're saying. They need only a summary. That's the recap of everything. You put that in your conclusion. You're going to recap your points, and you're probably going to recap your central idea. All of those, let's move on. Little transition there. And we're going to talk about how to make a great introduction. First, you need an attention getter. Attention. Now, here's the thing. Do not ever start a speech with, I'm going to tell you. I can tell you if you start lost interest. Everybody says that. You need to be unique, you need to be different, you need to be specific to your topic, but it has, oh, isn't that funny? I put face down here in the notes. Well, that's okay. We'll fix that later. Yeah, let me change that to facts and I'll have to, y'all can, fact. Like one example of a startling fact would be, did you know that 1 out of 4 women will be sexually assaulted or harassed in their life in their, it could be a startling fact. A rhetorical question. What would you do if? How would you respond if you're to know what my dog is thinking half the time? She gives me those enigmatic looks. Or an anecdote. And the best part about an anecdote, and it's an interesting story, okay? You can break it up into 2 parts. You've got the beginning part and the end part, and you can use the beginning part in your introduction and your whole speech. It's a great method, and it's a great use of your resources, and it really ties in. And then you need to introduce your topic, well, which you've probably already done through your attention getter, but you're going to add more. They need to know why they're there. They're not there just, well, okay, in our class, it's going to be just because they need to make a speech and get a grade. But establish your own credibility, okay? This is where you stand tall because if you can tell us your experience with certain things, with your topic, with, and of course, you're going to be stating your central idea and previewing your main ideas, okay? Your central idea and your main ideas. So, like I then this presentation are, and I told you because we're talking about organizing your speech. Here's an example of an attention, isn't he? But he looks so much younger here. When he retired from football, he used an anecdote, a story about his first professional football game. Now, how another way to establish your credibility? Eye contact. I say this quite a bit. You have to make contact with your audience. Here's the thing. When you look away from a person, they don't feel your sincerity when you're looking directly at them. Now, here's some ways to do it if you're scared to make eye contact. We already talked about one while you're speaking. Just choose those different people so you're moving back and forth. It makes you look like you're making eye contact. But if you really are scared to look at hairlines, at least it has the appearance of looking at your audience in the eye, okay? And a friendly smile. Come across as very sincere and it lowers your level of credibility. Conclusion. We talked about the introduction. Let's talk about the conclusion. One, it summarizes your speech. If you used an anecdote that you started in the beginning, you ended here, and it really helps to You're re-emphasizing the central idea in a memorable way that way. And if it's a persuasive speech, you have a call to action. It gives the audience a reason to respond, a reason to do something, a reason to act in some way. It provides closure, obviously. It tells closure because that's when you have the audience sitting there wondering if they should clap. Everybody looks around, are we done? And they don't know whether or not to clap yet. So many people will save their most important idea for that last bit. And if you have a great anecdote or a great conclusion of closure, we need closure. Without it, we get a little confused, a little lost. Again, I have an outline. The rest of the class does not. Let's talk about your outlines themselves. Speaking of, there are two different kinds of outlines you can use. One is your preparation. This is useful for you because your preparation outline is going to have everything in it. It's very detailed. It's got your central idea, your main ideas, your supporting, your conclusion. It's going to use a standard outline format because visually that assists us, and I've got an example on the next page. That was an internal preview. Let's talk about that. Let's move on. As you can see in the sample outline, what it does is it lines everything up. I can tell you the body of the speeches. Now, some people do the body a little bit different. It would be Roman numeral 2 would be point 1. Roman numeral 3 would be point 2. Either way, as long as it's outlined and appropriate and it's helpful to you. Within each level, you're going to make headings parallel. Why is that? I knew it was there. Okay, so you have an outline here. This is your preparation outline. You're going to put everything in there. You're going to use when you get up to speak. When you get up to speak, you're going to use note cards. I have examples of note cards somewhere in here. If you're going to use a note card, 1 point per card and write very large. Because when you give a speech, and let me kind of move up a little bit below the level of your chest. So you need to practice being able to do that. So you're going to use, you can use your note card. You can use a smartphone backup paper copy. This is the shortened version. This is what you're turning into me. It's 1 page, no more than 1 page, not one papers in front of the audience because then they get lost. It's distracting to the audience, okay? You're going to use that same standard outline format. Intro and conclusion. You're just going to have keywords, maybe a phrase or two to help you remember what you were going to say. Because after you create your preparation outline, you're in a random room and you're going to feel like a fool doing it. You can practice looking in a mirror. And once you get to the point you stop laughing at yourself, you're actually starting to improve. Practice talking to your pets. I have practiced speeches with poor Shelley before, and she just looks at me with that enigmatic look. You, your family, talk to your most supportive family member first, the one that never criticizes you or friend, then move to the family member for your speech. okay? But what you turn in is only your speaker outline. Also, on your speaker outline, you need to include your delivery things. If you need to look up, draw an eyeball, or put an arrow to remind you to look up at your audience because many people forget. I know I'm going to remember. And guess what? Under pressure, you might not remember. So you look up, or that is a musical, actually, I had to use a comma, but usually the symbol to breathe in musical notation, and that's what I was trying to go for. It's not really a comma, it's more of a pause, kind of, oh, that's horrible. Let me do it on the other side here. That looks better. That's kind of a slash to pause. Make sure to pause. We need time to process information. If you don't give us pauses, you're going too fast. And of course, make a connection with the audience that includes a smile. Okay, here's an example of what some people have done. Please don't. If that's your first words, we're going to have a problem. But as a preview towards the end of the introduction, that's fine. But the rest of it, it's just very short, sweet, to the point, just hints and tips about what you're going to be talking about. All right. I don't think, yep, we're back at the copyright. So that's all we have to discuss for chapter 12. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know.